Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about AI and specifically a potential ChatGPT competitor coming out of China. It's called DeepSeek. We've got a YouTube crash course video as our guide, and I think by the end of this you'll really understand why DeepSeek is generating so much buzz.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting to me is that they claim to achieve comparable or even better performance than ChatGPT, but at a fraction of the cost, something like 95 to 97% cost reduction. I mean, could this be a game changer?
Yeah. Okay, so before we go too far down that road, let's take a step back. What is DeepSeek and what makes it tick?
Well, DeepSeek focuses on open weight large language models. LLMs, you can think of it this way. ChatGPT is kind of like a high security vault guarding its secrets. DeepSeek is more like an open book, making its models publicly accessible for anyone to use or even modify.
So it's all about transparency, which kind of makes sense with the lower cost, right? Does that open approach have any downsides?
Oh, that's a good question. While open weight models promote collaboration and wider access, there are, of course, legitimate concerns about potential misuse. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. DeepSeek offers a range of models, including R1, R1Z, DeepSeek V3, and even specialized ones like Math Coder. But for this deep dive, we're mainly going to be focusing on R1, especially its evolution from the R10 model.
And from what I saw in the video, R1 is their DeepSeek's, I should say, text generation model. It's similar to ChatGPT in that it excels at writing and translating, but it doesn't generate images or have voice recognition capability.
Yeah, that's right. The crash course creator actually tested out DeepSeek's text capabilities with Japanese, which is a language known for its intricate grammar and, extensive character set. They used a Japanese language learning prompt, even a Japanese newspaper image to see what DeepSeek could do, and the results were pretty impressive.
I thought it was really interesting that the video mentioned that chip manufacturers saw their stock prices dip after DeepSeek's announcement. It sounds like companies are starting to question if they really need all that expensive hardware.
Yeah, AI development has traditionally been dominated by companies with, huge amounts of resources. DeepSeek's approach challenges that. It could open doors for smaller companies and developers who, previously just couldn't afford to play in this space.
Could someone run these models at home? I mean, I remember that the video mentioned someone using 7 stacked Mac Minis just to run DeepSeek R1.
That's a pretty extreme setup. I mean, the creator explored running DeepSeek locally on an Intel Lunar Lake AI PC development kit, which is essentially a mobile chip with, an integrated graphics card and a neural processing unit. They also tried a desktop workstation with a dedicated RTX 480 GPU.
So not exactly like your everyday laptop. So running these larger models requires serious horsepower.
Yeah. It shows the trade-offs between cost and performance. I mean, while it's technically possible to run larger models locally, it definitely requires a significant investment in hardware. The creator seemed particularly interested in running DeepSeek on these local setups, and they explored some tools like Llama, which lets you download and run open source models, right on your own machine.
I wanted to ask, could you explain more about open source models and why someone might choose to run them locally instead of relying on the cloud?
Well, open source models allow for greater control and customization. You're not reliant on a third-party provider, and you can tweak the model to your specific needs. Llama is great for experimenting. The creator used it to test out different sizes of the DeepSeek R1 model, pushing their hardware to the limit with 7 billion, 8 billion, and even 14 billion parameters.
Now, you've said parameters a few times now. For those of us who aren't, AI experts, what are they and why do they matter?
Well, think of parameters as the building blocks of an LLM. They're the values that the model learns during its training. And generally, the more parameters, the more complex and potentially more capable the model is.
So when we talk about billions of parameters, that's basically a measure of how complex the model is and how much it can potentially learn. But going back to those different model sizes, it sounds like things can get pretty dicey when you start pushing the limits, right? I mean, the video mentioned, system hangs and crashes. It sounds like walking a tightrope.
You're right. Larger models demand significant resources, and finding that sweet spot between performance and stability can be challenging.
Are there ways to make these larger models run more smoothly on less powerful hardware? I remember the creator mentioned something about distilled models, which sounded pretty interesting.
Yeah. Model distillation is a really fascinating technique. You can think of it like taking a large complex recipe and condensing it into a more streamlined version that still captures the essence of the original. You're transferring knowledge from a larger model to a smaller, more efficient one.
So you're basically creating a more lightweight version that can still pack a punch.
Yeah.
How does that process work?
Well, imagine you have a large, highly trained model. You can use this model to sort of teach a smaller model by, feeding it a curated data set and having it mimic the outputs of the larger model. And over time, the smaller model learns to approximate the behavior of the larger model, achieving comparable performance with, significantly reduced resource requirements.
That's really interesting. It sounds like a clever workaround for those who don't have access to, like, top-of-the-line hardware.
Exactly. It's one of the key strategies for making, LLMs more accessible to a wider audience.
Now, the creator also mentioned quantization. Mm-hmm. Is that related to model distillation?
Quantization is another technique for optimizing models. It's like using shorthand to represent information. Instead of storing model weights as very precise numbers, which can be computationally expensive, quantization reduces their precision. This makes the model smaller and faster without significantly impacting its accuracy.
So it's all about finding clever ways to, streamline these models, making them more efficient and accessible.
Precisely. And as we delve deeper into DeepSeek, we'll see how these optimization techniques play a crucial role in making this, powerful technology more widely available.
I think we've covered a lot of ground already. But before we move on to the broader implications of DeepSeek and, open weight models, I think it's worth taking a closer look at the creator's experience with Hugging Face and Transformers. They really seem to get into the weeds there.
Yeah, their exploration of Hugging Face and Transformers is a good example of how, accessible these AI tools are becoming. Hugging Face offers a vast library of pre-trained models, including different versions of DeepSeek, while Transformers is a powerful library for, working with LLMs.
So they provide building blocks and frameworks for developers to experiment with, customized LLMs.
Exactly. But as the creator found, even with these tools, there's still, a learning curve. Setting up the environment, installing dependencies, and, configuring the models can be challenging.
So there's this balance between making AI more accessible and the technical knowledge needed to actually, use these tools effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a growing need for educational resources and user-friendly interfaces that can bridge the gap between the potential of these technologies and the technical expertise required to really harness them.
I think we've got a good understanding of the technical foundation now. So shifting gears a little bit, why should anyone outside of the AI research community care about DeepSeek? What makes it so important, in the grand scheme of things?
That's a great question. And that's something we're going to explore further in part 2 of our deep dive. The emergence of DeepSeek and other open weight models, has the potential to disrupt the entire AI landscape. It challenges the dominance of, closed models like ChatGPT, and it raises some interesting questions about who controls the future of AI development.
So we're not just talking about a new AI model. We're talking about a potential shift in how AI is developed, how it's accessed, and ultimately how it impacts our life. I'm definitely eager to unpack those implications more in part 2. But for now, I think we need to take a quick break.
Okay, sounds good. When we come back, we'll explore the broader implications of DeepSeek and, open weight models. We'll dive into the potential benefits, the challenges, and, the ethical considerations of this rapidly evolving field.
Welcome back to our deep dive into DeepSeek. We've, really gotten into the technical side of this open weight LLM. I'm curious now about why this matters to the world beyond AI labs and, coding communities.
I think that's where it gets really interesting. DeepSeek's, open weight approach with this focus on accessibility and affordability, it could democratize access to these powerful AI tools. Imagine a world where researchers, startups, even individuals can harness cutting-edge AI tech without breaking the bank.
That's a really cool vision. It sounds like DeepSeek could really, level the playing field in AI development, give smaller players a fighting chance. How realistic is that?
Well, it's early days, but I think the potential is there. Think about, language learning and translation. DeepSeek's ability to handle, these complex languages like Japanese, that could lead to a whole new generation of, personalized language tutors or real-time translation tools that are far more accurate and nuanced than what we have now. Or even AI-powered assistants that can understand and respond to multiple languages.
That would be incredible. It would break down so many barriers to communication and understanding. But, we did touch on this earlier. Let's not forget about the downsides of open weight models. It's worth digging into that a little bit more.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Open weight models, like any powerful technology, can be misused. There's a risk that someone could, use DeepSeek to generate harmful or misleading content, or even create like deep fakes that are basically indistinguishable from reality.
So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, you have this amazing potential for good, but also the possibility for, real misuse. So how do we sort of navigate that? How do we balance that?
It's a complex challenge and one that requires, careful consideration. Open weight models don't negate the need for, ethical guidelines and responsible use. It's crucial to develop, safeguards and promote responsible AI development. And, transparency is key. By making the inner workings of these models, more accessible, researchers can identify potential biases, vulnerabilities, areas for improvement.
So it's not just about open sourcing the technology. It's about, creating this culture of responsible AI development.
Exactly. Yeah. Open weight models can unlock, I think, some incredible innovation and progress, but we need to approach their development and deployment with, a sense of shared responsibility.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I remember in the Crash Course video, the creator mentioned Intel's OpenVINO framework. How does that fit into this picture of democratizing AI?
Yeah, OpenVINO is a great example of, how we can make these powerful models more accessible. It's an optimization framework that, it aims to improve the performance of LLMs on different hardware platforms, including those that, aren't typically associated with cutting edge AI development.
So it's not just about making the models themselves open source. It's about making them run efficiently on, the hardware that people actually have.
Yeah, exactly. It's about, lowering the barrier to entry so that more people can participate in this AI revolution.
I'm really starting to see how DeepSeek could be, more than just another AI model. It could be like a catalyst for this major shift in the AI landscape.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. But, where does DeepSeek fit into the bigger picture of AI development? Is it a flash in the pan, or is this like a sign of things to come?
That's a great question. DeepSeek is, they've made a splash, that's for sure, with its performance and, cost advantages. But, is it a real contender to ChatGPT and these other established players?
Well, DeepSeek R1, it focuses primarily on text generation, but, its performance and cost effectiveness, it demonstrates that, it's feasible to develop these high performing LLMs without massive resources. It's a proof of concept that challenges this idea that only companies with, deep pockets can compete in this space.
So it's a signal that, that the landscape is shifting. Are there other companies or research groups working on these kinds of, open weight models?
Oh, absolutely. The open source AI community it's so vibrant right now. Projects like, Eleuther AI and Stability AI, they're developing impressive LLMs that are, freely available for research and experimentation.
It feels like we're really on the edge of, this big change in AI development.
Yeah, I think the rise of open weight models, it represents a potential turning point in how AI evolves. It could lead to a more open, collaborative, and inclusive AI ecosystem.
And that could have, huge implications for how AI is developed, deployed, and ultimately how it impacts our lives.
Exactly. It's such a fascinating and, rapidly evolving field. And I think it's really important to stay informed and engage in, these thoughtful discussions about the impact of these powerful technologies.
I think we've covered so much ground today, but before we jump ahead, let's just take a moment to think about what we've learned.
Yeah, sounds good. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts, and we'll point you to some resources so you can, dig deeper into this fascinating world of open weight AI.
Welcome back to the final part of our DeepSeek deep dive. I gotta say, it's been a fascinating journey, exploring the technical side and the potential impact of this open weight LLM.
Yeah, what really stands out to you from our discussion so far?
Honestly, for me, it's the potential for DeepSeek to, democratize AI. The idea that smaller companies, researchers, even individuals could have access to this power without needing like a supercomputer it's pretty revolutionary, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a key takeaway from what we've talked about, right? DeepSeek's, cost effectiveness and open weight approach could really level the playing field in AI.
Exactly. So for our listener who might be, feeling a bit inspired, but also maybe a bit overwhelmed, where can they go to learn more? And maybe even start, experimenting with these open weight LLMs like DeepSeek.
A great place to start is the Hugging Face Model Hub. It's like a treasure trove of open source AI models, including, all these different versions of DeepSeek. And, you can browse by task, by language, even, by framework. So it's pretty easy to find what you're looking for.
It sounds like, a one-stop shop for anyone who's interested in this world of open source AI.
It really is. And the best part is, it's not just about downloading models. Hugging Face has this, this whole vibrant community of developers and researchers who are, they're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So it's a chance to, not just learn from the experts, but actually, get involved and contribute to this whole open weight AI movement. Are there any, other, resources or communities that you would recommend?
Oh yeah, for sure. There are all these online communities, that are all about AI development. It's a great way to connect with other people who are, kind of in the same space. Ask questions, share your projects. You can find forums, Discord servers. There are even like virtual meetups where you can learn from others and, maybe even collaborate on some really cool projects.
It sounds like the open source AI community is really, alive and well. This whole deep dive it's really given me this whole new perspective on what's possible. Yeah. I'm starting to see how DeepSeek and these other open weight LLMs, it's more than just tools. It could be like a catalyst for, this global wave of innovation. Right?
Yeah. I think you hit it right on the head. It's not just about the tech. It's about, it's about empowering people to create, to innovate, and to solve problems in ways that weren't even possible before.
That's a very, very exciting prospect. As we wrap up this deep dive, is there anything else you want to, leave our listener with? Anything else you want them to take away from this discussion?
I think it all comes back to this idea of, of democratizing AI. DeepSeek and this whole open weight movement, they have the potential to reshape the whole AI landscape. And, it's up to all of us to explore these tools responsibly, to, collaborate, and to make sure that AI is used to benefit, all of humanity.
Very well said. And, on that note, we'll leave our listener with one final thought. As these open weight models like DeepSeek, they keep evolving, they become more and more accessible. How will this shift, the balance of power in the tech world? Will we see this whole new waves of innovation driven by individuals and smaller organizations? Mm. Or will the established giants, maintain their grip on everything? It's
a really interesting question, and I don't think there's any easy answer. But one thing is for sure, the future of AI is it's unfolding right in front of us, and it's a journey worth paying attention to.
Yeah. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.